The great hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as Ambassador Sarah Chen stepped up to the speaking platform. Her small human frame looked tiny among the towering alien delegates, but her voice carried clearly through the massive chamber when she spoke. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began. Her words translated instantly into hundreds of languages. "Today marks the end of humanity's participation in galactic affairs." A ripple of surprise moved through the assembled delegates. The Crozan representative, General Thax, leaned forward in his battle armor. His forearms crossed over his chest as he studied the human woman with predatory yellow eyes. "For 300 years, Sarah continued, humanity has served this council faithfully. We have proposed solutions to conflicts. We have offered our ships for peacekeeping missions. We have opened our trade routes to all species. We have mediated disputes between worlds that seemed impossible to resolve." Elder Vorthak of the Althari floated in his ceremonial robes, his ancient mind already dismissing the humans' words. The Althari had lived for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. What could these young creatures possibly understand about galactic politics? "And for 300 years, Sarah's voice grew stronger, our proposals have been rejected. Our solutions have been ignored. Our offers of help have been dismissed as naive interference from a species too young to understand the complexity of galactic civilization." The Nixari delegation whispered among themselves through their neural links. Their gray, elongated heads tilted as they calculated the economic impact of human withdrawal. Humans controlled several important trade routes, but nothing the Nixari couldn't replace with proper planning and investment. "The straw that broke our patience," Sarah said, her brown eyes scanning the chamber, "was last month's vote on the Kepler-7 crisis. Our negotiation team spent 6 months developing a solution that would have saved both the mining colonies and the sacred groves. A solution that respected both Vex and Althari interests. It was rejected without discussion." Minister Kellax of the Vex Confederacy shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His scaled hide gleamed under the chamber's lights as he remembered the vote. The human proposal had been actually quite reasonable, but accepting solutions from such a young species would have set a dangerous precedent. 3 million Vex miners and their families now face starvation, Sarah continued. The Althari sacred groves burn in the mining fires. Both sides prepare for war over resources that could have been shared. This is what happens when wisdom is measured only by age, and worth is determined by how long a species has been traveling between stars. A low growl came from the Crozan section. General Thax did not like being lectured by a creature who would die of old age before he finished his military training. "So we are leaving," Sarah announced. "Effective immediately, all human diplomatic missions are recalled. All trade agreements are canceled. All military cooperation agreements are void. We withdraw from all council committees, research programs, and peacekeeping operations." The chamber erupted in voices. Delegates spoke in dozens of languages, creating a cacophony of alien sounds. Some seemed pleased. Others appeared worried. Most just seemed confused. Elder Vorthak raised one of his forearms and his voice boomed through the chamber with the authority of millennia. "Surely the humans do not expect us to beg them to stay. If they wish to isolate themselves like frightened children, let them go. The galaxy functioned perfectly well before they arrived." Sarah smiled coldly. "We are not isolating ourselves, Elder Vorthak. We are simply done wasting our time on a council that values tradition over progress, age over wisdom, and pride over cooperation. Humanity has work to do among the stars. Important work that cannot be accomplished while sitting in endless committee meetings." "What work?" demanded General Thax. "What could a species barely out of its home system possibly accomplish that we cannot?" "That," Sarah replied, "is no longer your concern. We came to this galaxy as friends, offering partnership and cooperation. We are leaving as strangers, owing nothing to anyone." She turned toward the exit, then paused and looked back over the vast chamber filled with beings from across the galaxy. History will judge whether the Council made the right choice today, whether the oldest and strongest civilizations in the galaxy were wise to reject the help of the youngest. I hope for all our sakes that you were right to turn us away." With that, Ambassador Sarah Chen walked out of the Galactic Council chamber for the last time. Her heels clicked on the polished floor as she made her way to the docking bay where the human transport ship waited. Behind her, the delegates began to argue among themselves. The Crozan wanted to send warships to prevent human ships from leaving Council space. The Nixari calculated the economic disruption of cancelled trade deals. The Althari spoke of the natural order being restored now that the upstart humans had removed themselves. But in the deepest levels of the Council archives, Chief Archivist Zelen worked alone among the ancient records. His 6 insectoid arms moved quickly through holographic displays as he searched through the oldest files in the galaxy. Something about the humans' departure troubled him, though he could not say exactly what. The precursor records were fragmentary. The great civilization that had once spanned the galaxy had left few traces of their existence before their mysterious disappearance millions of years ago. But they had left warnings, prophecies, predictions about the future that had proven unnervingly accurate over the millennia. Zeland's compound eyes focused on a passage that made his chitin shiver with unease. When the bridge builders turn their backs, the great silence will follow, and what was built will crumble. Bridge builders. The term appeared in several precursor texts, always referring to some future species that would unite what was divided. Could they have meant humans? He searched deeper into the files, following connections that most archivists would have missed. More fragments emerged. They alone see all paths and connect all threads. Without them, the web tears. And most disturbing of all, the young ones carry the old wisdom unknowing. Cast them out and darkness returns from the void. Zeland's hands trembled as he cross-referenced the prophecies with current events. The Kepler-7 crisis that had sparked the human departure. The increasing tensions between Council species. The strange reports from the outer rim about missing ships and silent colonies. A communication screen flickered to life beside him. The face of Admiral Chen appeared, not Sarah but her daughter Maria, now commanding the human Exodus fleet. Chief Archivist Zelen, she said formally. This is our final transmission from Council space. As of tomorrow, all human vessels will be beyond your borders. I want you to know that humanity bears no grudge against individuals like yourself, who tried to build bridges between our peoples. Admiral, Zelen said quickly, I must speak with you about the precursor prophecies. There are warnings. The warnings have already come true, Maria interrupted gently. We are leaving because we must prepare for what comes next. I pray that when the time comes, the Council will remember that humanity always preferred cooperation to conquest. The transmission ended, leaving Zelan alone with the ancient warnings and a growing certainty that the galaxy had just made a terrible mistake. Outside his window, he could see the last human ships disappearing into hyperspace, carrying with them something the galaxy would desperately need in the dark times ahead. 6 months after the humans departed, the first cracks began to show. General Tack stood in his command center on the fortress world of Crozan Prime, staring at reports that made his 4 hands clench into fists. The Vex Confederacy had launched a surprise attack on the disputed mining stations around Kepler-7. What should have been a minor skirmish had exploded into a full-scale war that was spreading across 3 star systems. How did this happen? He growled at his intelligence officers. The Vex have been all talk and no action for decades. What changed? Commander Vrak, his chief aide, consulted his battle tablet with nervous claws. Sir, it appears the Vex were emboldened by the absence of human mediators. Ambassador Chen's negotiation team had been secretly meeting with both sides for months, keeping tensions from boiling over. Without their interference, Thax repeated slowly. The word tasted bitter in his mouth. He remembered dismissing human diplomats as naive children playing at politics. Now those same children were gone and the galaxy was already bleeding. On the other side of the war zone, Minister Kellax of the Vex Confederacy faced his own crisis. The mining operation on Kepler-7 had been essential to Vex industry, but the human proposal would have forced them to share the profits with the tree-hugging Althari. Now the Althari were fighting back with a ferocity that surprised everyone. The sacred groves are burning, reported his military advisor, General Yis. The Althari have called up their entire fleet. They're not just defending anymore. They're attacking our supply lines across the sector. Kellax's scaled face darkened. The humans had warned this would happen. They had predicted exactly how the conflict would spiral out of control if both sides dug in their positions. But the Vex could not show weakness by accepting solutions from such a young species. Commit the reserve fleets, Kellax ordered. We finish this quickly before it gets worse, but it was already getting worse. Much worse. In the neutral zone between Crozan and Nexari space, Captain Zeth of the merchant vessel Grey Prophet received a distress call that chilled his blood. The massive cargo hauler Divine Wind had been attacked while carrying medical supplies to a plague-stricken colony. "This is Captain Yara of the Divine Wind." The transmission crackled with static. "We are under attack by unknown vessels. They're not responding to any communications. They're ships. I've never seen designs like these. They're cutting through our escorts like they're made of paper. Oh gods, they're boarding us. They're not taking prisoners, they're—" The transmission cut to static. Zeth stared at his communication console in horror. The Divine Wind had been protected by a full squadron of Althari guard ships, some of the finest military vessels in the galaxy. What kind of pirates could destroy an entire escort fleet? More reports flooded in over the following weeks. Entire trade convoys vanishing without a trace. Colonies going silent mid-transmission. Search and rescue teams finding only debris fields and strange radiation signatures that matched nothing in any species database. The attacks followed no pattern that Council strategists could understand. Pirates usually targeted valuable cargo or demanded ransoms. These attackers took nothing and left no survivors. They seemed to strike randomly across the galaxy, hitting military and civilian targets with equal viciousness. Elder Vorthak floated in his meditation chamber on the Althari homeworld, trying to find wisdom in the ancient texts. But the words that had guided his people for millennia offered no insight into the current chaos. The sacred groves of Kepler 7 burned in his mind's eye, their 1,000-year-old trees reduced to ash by Vex mining lasers. A younger Althari, Scholar Mindel, approached with obvious reluctance. "Elder, we have received another request from the Nexari for a ceasefire negotiation. They offer to mediate between us and the Vex." Vorthak's ancient eyes dimmed with sadness. "The Nexari see only profit and loss. They cannot understand that some things are more important than economics. The humans understood. They spent months learning our customs, studying our history. They knew why the groves were sacred. Should we accept the Nexari offer? What choice do we have?" Vorthak replied bitterly. "The humans are gone. We must work with what remains, but the Nexari mediation was a disaster. Their cold logic and focus on economic efficiency offended both sides. The Vex felt their territorial claims were being dismissed as mere balance sheets. The Althari were outraged when the Nexari suggested that the sacred groves could be relocated to less valuable systems. The talks collapsed within days, and the war spread further. Chief Archivist Zelan worked frantically in the deepest levels of the Council archives, following the trail of precursor warnings. Each new crisis seemed to match the ancient prophecies with terrifying accuracy. Without them, the web tears, he read again and again. The web was definitely tearing. Trade routes that had functioned smoothly for centuries were breaking down as species withdrew into defensive positions. The Universal Translation Network was failing, as technician crews were recalled to defend their homeworlds. Even the Council itself could barely maintain quorum as delegates were called home to deal with local emergencies. Most disturbing were the reports from the Rim territories. Entire sectors were going dark, their communications cutting off abruptly. The few survivors who made it to Council space told wild stories of ships that moved like living things, and weapons that seemed to devour matter itself. Zelan found another precursor fragment that made his compound eyes widen with fear. The Devourers sleep beyond the Rim, waiting for the web to weaken. Only the bridge builders can wake the ancient defenses. Devourers. The word appeared in several texts, always associated with destruction and darkness. But what were they? And what were these ancient defenses? He tried to contact human space, but all communication channels had been severed. Humanity had vanished beyond the explored galaxy as completely as if they had never existed. In his private office, Council Speaker Mordain reviewed the casualty reports from the expanding conflicts. The Vex-Althari War had drawn in 6 other species as allies and suppliers. The Crozan were mobilizing their fleets to maintain order in sectors that had never asked for their protection. The mysterious attacks on the Rim were forcing entire populations to abandon their worlds. 3 months ago, he had been relieved to see the troublesome humans leave. Their constant proposals and idealistic solutions had been an annoyance to the natural order of things. The strong ruled, the weak obeyed, and each species knew their place in the hierarchy. Now that natural order was collapsing into chaos. His aide, a nervous Thys named Quinn, approached with another stack of emergency reports. Speaker Mordain, the Outer Rim Defense Network has lost contact with 17 more systems. The Nexari are threatening to withdraw from all joint defense treaties. And, sir, there are reports of unidentified ships massing near the galactic core. Mordain felt a chill run down his spine. The galactic core was forbidden space, the graveyard of the precursors filled with ancient weapons and defenses that no modern species fully understood. What kind of ships? He asked quietly. Unknown design, sir. But the sensor readings, they don't match any known propulsion systems. It's almost like they're not using conventional engines at all. Outside Mordain's window, he could see the Council fleet on patrol around the station, mighty warships from a dozen species, each representing thousands of years of military advancement and experience. Somehow, looking at them now, he felt like he was watching children playing with toys while something vast and terrible stirred in the darkness between the stars. The humans had tried to warn them. They had offered solutions, cooperation, unity, and the Council had turned them away with the arrogance of age and power. Now, as the galaxy began to tear itself apart, Mordain found himself wondering if the youngest species in the Council might have been the wisest after all. 2 years had passed since humanity's departure, and the galaxy was dying. Fleet Admiral Corvex of the combined Council forces stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with growing despair. Red markers filled the hologram, each one representing a lost system, a destroyed fleet, or a colony that had simply stopped responding to all communications. The enemy had finally shown themselves, and they were nothing like anything in the Council's databases. Report from the 4th Fleet, his communications officer announced, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. They engaged the unknown vessels at Sector 447. Admiral Thross reports that the enemy ships seem to be made of some kind of living metal. Our weapons damage them, but they repair themselves within minutes. Corvex studied the battle recordings with his senior staff. The enemy vessels were bizarre, sleek and curved like organic creatures, but clearly technological. They moved through space in perfect coordination like a school of fish or a flock of birds. Their weapons didn't just destroy ships, they seemed to dissolve them, breaking down matter at the molecular level. Where are they coming from? Demanded General Tax, who had been forced to abandon his beloved Crozan space to join the desperate defense effort. No species in the galaxy has technology like this. Chief Science Officer Valian, one of the few Althari still working with the military, consulted her instruments with trembling hands. The energy signatures are ancient, pre-galactic civilization ancient. Sir, I believe these are the devourers mentioned in the precursor records. A cold silence fell over the bridge. Everyone had heard the legends, stories of an ancient enemy that had forced the mighty precursors to build the massive defense installations that still dotted the galactic core. Most had assumed they were myths. The precursors defeated them once, Corvex said slowly. How? Unknown, sir. Most of the records were destroyed when the precursors vanished. But Chief Archivist Zelen has been researching the fragments. He believes the key lies in something called the Weapon of Unity. On the homeworld of the Nexari, President Calix stared at economic projections that showed the complete collapse of galactic civilization within 6 months. Trade had virtually stopped as species pulled back to defend their core systems. The attacks were becoming more frequent and more devastating. Entire sectors were being abandoned as populations fled toward the galactic center. What news from the Rim territories? She asked her intelligence chief. Gone, Madam President. All of them. The Devourers have consumed everything from the outer edge to approximately Sector Line 700. At their current rate of advance, they will reach the inner colonies within a year. Calix closed her eyes. The Nexari had spent millennia building the most sophisticated economic network in the galaxy. Now it was all crumbling faster than ice in a star's fire. And the humans? Still no contact. Our scouts have found evidence of their passage through the outer systems. Construction sites, modified planets, energy signatures. But the colonies themselves appear to be evacuated. It's as if they built something massive out there and then vanished. In the Council archives, Zelen had barely slept in months. Every available fragment of precursor data was spread before him as he desperately searched for clues about how to fight the Devourers. What he found was not encouraging. The ancient texts spoke of the Devourers as a plague from beyond the galaxy. machines that consumed matter and energy to reproduce themselves endlessly. The precursors had fought them for thousands of years before finally driving them back beyond the galactic rim. But the cost had been enormous. The precursor civilization had exhausted itself in the war, eventually collapsing and disappearing from history. One fragment haunted Zeland's dreams. The enemy understands only consumption and growth. They cannot be reasoned with, cannot be bargained with, cannot be turned from their purpose. Only the weapon of unity can stand against the infinite hunger. But what was this weapon of unity? The references were maddeningly vague. It was not a device or a ship, but something more abstract. A principle, a way of fighting that turned diversity into strength. The bridge builders alone can forge the weapon, read another fragment. They alone see the patterns that bind disparate minds. When darkness returns from the void, only they can unite what divides. Bridge builders, the term that had led him to the humans in the first place. Zeland tried repeatedly to contact human space, but every message disappeared into the void. Humanity had vanished as completely as if they had never existed, leaving only empty installations and the growing certainty that they had known this day would come. On the bridge of the Devourer command ship, if it could be called that, the collective consciousness that controlled the fleet processed new data from the advancing swarm. The galaxy was even weaker than anticipated. The organic species fought each other almost as much as they fought the Devourers. Their fleets were poorly coordinated. Their weapons were primitive. It had been so different the last time. The precursors had somehow learned to fight as one mind while remaining many bodies. Their fleets had moved with perfect coordination, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be and what they would do. Their weapons had been modified to work in harmony, creating destructive effects far beyond the sum of their parts. But these new organics fought like animals, each species protecting only its own territory, each fleet following only its own tactics. They would fall quickly, and the galaxy would feed the swarm for millions of years to come. Still, something about the current situation puzzled the collective. Long-range sensors detected massive energy buildups in the unexplored regions beyond the galaxy's edge. Something was out there, something that had learned to hide from Devourer sensors. The collective filed the information away and focused on the immediate harvest. Whatever was hiding in the outer darkness could be dealt with later, after the galaxy was consumed. In a secret bunker beneath the council chambers, the surviving leadership of galactic civilization gathered for what might be their final meeting. Representatives from dozens of species sat around a circular table, their faces showing the strain of 2 years of losing battles. "The situation is hopeless," stated Nixari President Calix bluntly. "Our combined fleets cannot slow their advance. Our weapons barely scratch them, and they reproduce faster than we can destroy them. There must be something," Elder Vorthak insisted. "Some weakness we have not discovered." General Thack slammed his 4 fists on the table. "We need the humans. Their ships, their tactics, their strange ability to make incompatible technologies work together. But they are gone, and we drove them away with our arrogance." "Perhaps," said a quiet voice from the shadows, "it is time to go looking for them." Chief Archivist Zeland stepped into the light, his insectoid features drawn with exhaustion, but his compound eyes bright with determination. "The precursor records are clear," he continued. "The bridge builders are the key to victory. Without them, the galaxy falls. With them, there is hope." "But they could be anywhere," protested Minister Kellax. "The outer galaxy is vast. How would we even begin to search?" Zeland placed a data crystal on the table. "I have been analyzing the energy signatures from their construction sites. The humans were not fleeing randomly. They were following a specific pattern, moving towards something in the deep outer regions. Something that matches descriptions in the precursor files of their ultimate defensive installations." "You think the humans found precursor technology?" "I think," Zeland said slowly, "that the humans have been preparing for this war since the day they left council space. The question is, will they help a galaxy that cast them out as children and fools?" Outside the bunker, evacuation ships lifted off from the council station as the government prepared to retreat further toward the galactic center. The Devourers were coming, and there was nowhere left to run. But in the deep outer darkness beyond the reach of Devourer sensors, human ships moved through the void with quiet purpose. They had been preparing for 2 years, building and learning and waiting for the moment when the galaxy would need them most. That moment was almost here. The Council expedition fleet moved through the outer darkness like ghosts, following energy signatures that grew stronger with each jump. Admiral Corvex commanded the mission from his flagship, but everyone knew the real leader was Chief Archivist Zelan, whose research had made this desperate search possible. 2 more systems ahead, reported the navigation officer. Energy readings are off the charts. Whatever the humans built out here, it's massive. General Thack stood at the tactical station, his forearms crossed as he studied the scanner displays. No defensive formations, no patrol ships. Either they are very confident or this is a trap. With respect, General, Zelan said quietly. If the humans wanted us dead, they would not have needed to lure us into the outer reaches to accomplish it. The first sign of human presence was a ring of modified asteroids around a red dwarf star. The rocks had been hollowed out and converted into something that hurt to look at directly. Geometric patterns that seemed to twist space around them, creating visual distortions that made seasoned spacers nauseous. My gods, whispered the science officer. Those are precursor designs. But modified, enhanced. How did they learn to work with technology we barely understand? The answer came as they rounded the star and saw what lay beyond. A planet that had not existed in any star charts now orbited the red dwarf in perfect stability. It was clearly artificial, a sphere of metal and crystal that pulsed with energy patterns that registered on every sensor they possessed. Massive structures extended from its surface like the arms of a sea creature, reaching out to touch other artificial constructs that floated in perfect formation around the world. It's a fortress, Thax breathed. A fortress built from an entire planet. Ships began to appear on their sensors. Human ships, but like nothing the Council had ever seen. They moved with the same fluid grace as the Devourer vessels. But their energy signatures were completely different. Clean, purposeful, controlled. A communication channel opened, and a familiar face appeared on their screens. Admiral Maria Chen looked older than when she had commanded the human exodus, but her eyes held the same steady determination her mother had shown in the Council chambers years ago. Admiral Corvex, she said formally, I assume you did not come all this way for a social visit. The Devourers have reached the inner systems, haven't they? Corvex nodded grimly. Admiral Chen, the Council. We need your help. The galaxy is dying and we cannot stop them. Maria's expression did not change. The galaxy cast us out when it needed us most. Our warnings were ignored. Our solutions were rejected. Our offers of cooperation were dismissed as naive interference. Why should we return to die for people who never valued us? The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew she was right. The Council had treated humanity with condescension and contempt from the beginning. They had assumed that age meant wisdom, and that newer species had nothing to contribute. It was Elder Vorthak who finally spoke. The ancient Althari had insisted on joining the expedition despite his age, and his voice carried the weight of millennia when he answered. Because you are better than we are, he said simply. Because you see connections where we see only differences. Because you build bridges where we build walls. And because the galaxy needs bridge builders now more than it has ever needed anything. Maria studied the old alien's face for a long moment. You have learned much since we left, Elder Vorthak. But learning and acting are different things. What has the Council done to prepare for this war besides sending a single expedition to beg for our help? Nothing, Vorthak admitted. We have fought as we always fight. Each species for itself, each fleet following its own tactics, each world standing alone. And we have been crushed for our arrogance. Then you understand why we left, Maria said. The Devourers cannot be fought with conventional tactics. They move as one mind, strike with perfect coordination, adapt to any strategy within hours. The only way to defeat them is to become something they cannot understand. A unified force that fights as one while remaining many. Admiral Corvex leaned forward. Is that what you have been doing out here? Building unity? For the first time, Maria smiled. Building, testing, perfecting. We have spent 2 years learning to integrate precursor technology with our own, not just copying their designs but understanding their principles. Do you know what made the precursors so powerful, Admiral? Their technology? Corvex guessed. Their cooperation, Maria corrected. The precursors were not one species. They were dozens of species that learned to work together so completely that they became something greater than the sum of their parts. Their technology did not create unity. Unity created their technology. She gestured to something off-screen, and the display shifted to show the interior of the fortress world. Beings from dozens of species worked together in vast chambers, but these were not the species of the current galaxy. These were refugees, survivors from worlds the Devourers had already consumed. We did not abandon the galaxy, Maria explained. We prepared for its defense. Every ship that escaped the Devourer advance, every survivor who made it to the outer rim, we found them, we saved them, we gave them new purpose. Crozan warriors working with Althari philosophers, Nexari economists planning logistics with Vex miners, species that have been enemies for centuries, now building weapons together that none of them could create alone. General Thax stared at the display in amazement. Crozan soldiers were training alongside beings from a dozen different worlds, their movements perfectly synchronized, despite their completely different physiologies. How is this possible? He asked. How do you coordinate so many different species? The same way humanity has always done it, Maria replied. We find what connects instead of what divides. We look for common goals instead of old grudges. We treat diversity as strength instead of weakness. Ceylon stepped forward, his compound eyes bright with excitement. This is it. This is the weapon of unity the precursors wrote about. Not a device, but a principle, a way of fighting that multiplies strength instead of just adding it. But will it work against the Devourers? Corvex asked. Maria's smile faded. We are about to find out. Our sensors show Devourer scout fleets approaching this system. They have followed your ships here, Admiral. The final battle will begin within days. Then let us fight together, Vorthak said. Human, Althari, Crozan, Nexari, all of us as equals, all of us as one. Maria looked at each of them in turn, measuring their sincerity. These were not the same beings who had dismissed humanity 2 years ago. The war had humbled them, taught them painful lessons about the cost of division and pride. Very well, she said finally, but this fight will be different from anything you have ever experienced. You will have to trust completely in coordination you do not understand. You will have to follow tactics that seem impossible. You will have to believe that weakness can become strength and that cooperation can triumph over raw power. We believe, Corvex said simply. We have no choice but to believe. Then welcome to the real war, Maria replied. The war for the soul of the galaxy. Signal your fleets to take positions around the fortress world. We have work to do. As the Council ships moved into formation with the human fleet, something remarkable began to happen. The different vessels started to move in patterns that matched and complemented each other. Crozan destroyers took positions that protected Nexari supply ships. Althari carriers launched fighters that coordinated perfectly with human scouts. It was as if the entire fleet was becoming a single organism, diverse but unified, many but one. In the depths of space, Devourer sensors detected the approaching battle and began calculations to optimize their attack. But for the first time in millions of years, their projections showed something they had never encountered before. A variable they could not calculate. A pattern they could not predict. The bridge builders had returned, and they brought with them the weapon that had defeated the Devourers once before. Not technology, but unity itself. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace like a living nightmare. Thousands of ships that moved and flowed like metallic sea creatures, their hulls rippling with organic patterns that hurt to watch. They had consumed half the galaxy, and their hunger was infinite. Admiral Maria Chen stood in the command center of the fortress world, surrounded by beings from dozens of species. Crozan generals worked alongside Althari philosophers. Nexari strategists shared data with Vex miners. Human coordinators moved between them all, weaving their different strengths into something greater than any single species could achieve. Enemy fleet size? She asked calmly. Approximately 15,000 vessels, reported Commander Yiss, a Vex tactical officer whose scaled features showed the strain of the past few days. Mass equivalent to a small moon. Our forces? 3,000 ships. Mixed fleet. Multiple species, multiple technologies. He paused, looking at the impossible coordination on his screens. Ma'am, I have never seen different species work together like this. It should not be possible, Maria smiled. That's what makes it effective. The Devourers understand individual strength. They understand hierarchical command structures. They do not understand cooperative diversity. To them we look like chaos. To us we are harmony. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Corvex watched the tactical display with amazement. Human coordinators had somehow linked every ship in the fleet into a single network that shared data, tactics, and positioning in real time. Krosan destroyers moved to protect Althari science vessels at exactly the right moment. Nexari cruisers provided covering fire for human fighters without being asked. It was like watching a dance performed by thousands of partners who had never rehearsed together, but somehow knew every step. General Thax commanded the frontline assault force, his forearms moving across control panels with practiced ease. But the tactics he was following were unlike anything in Krosan military doctrine. Instead of the direct confrontation his people preferred, the battle plan called for fluid movements, adaptive responses, and coordination with species that had been traditional enemies. Human vessel Peacemaker, this is General Thax, he spoke into his communicator, requesting tactical update for Assault Formation 7. Copy that. General, came the reply from Captain Sarah Kim, great-granddaughter of the human ambassador who had walked away from the Council years ago. Devourer ships are adapting to your attack pattern. Switch to Formation 12 in 30 seconds. The Althari will provide psychic disruption, the Nexari will target their coordination nodes, and your forces will punch through their center line. Thax bared his fangs in what might have been a grin. Understood. Warriors of Krosan, prepare for coordinated assault. The battle began like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of massive fleets crashing together in brutal frontal combat, the unified forces moved like a living thing. They flowed around Devourer formations, struck from unexpected angles, and adapted their tactics faster than the enemy could respond. When Devourer ships tried to self-repair, Althari vessels disrupted their molecular bonds with precisely timed energy pulses. When the enemy attempted to overwhelm a position with superior numbers, Krosan warriors held the line just long enough for Nexari ships to coordinate devastating flanking attacks. When Devourer commanders tried to predict the Allied movements, human coordinators shifted the entire battle plan in seconds, turning expected maneuvers into elaborate feints. It's working, breathed Chief Science Officer Valian from her position on the Althari command ship. Their adaptation algorithms cannot process our coordination patterns. They keep trying to predict what each species will do individually, but we are not fighting as individuals. Elder Vorthak floated beside her. His ancient mind reached out to connect with the psychic network that linked all Althari vessels. But for the first time in centuries, he was not just sensing other Althari. Human coordinators had somehow learned to interface with their telepathic abilities, creating a communication network that spanned species and technologies. I can feel them all, he whispered in wonder. Every ship, every mind, every decision. We are truly one fleet, one purpose, one weapon against the darkness. The Devourers fought back with terrifying ferocity. Their ships dissolved matter with exotic weapons that turned solid hulls into expanding clouds of atoms. They swarmed damaged vessels with boarding craft full of mechanical horrors that consumed everything in their path. They adapted their tactics with machine precision, learning from each encounter and becoming more effective with every exchange. But for the first time in their existence, they faced something they could not understand or counter. True cooperation between radically different forms of life. Devourer. Command ship identified, reported the sensor. Officer on Maria's fortress world. It's coordinating their entire fleet from the center of their formation. Maria studied the tactical display. The command ship was massive, protected by layers of escort vessels and defensive screens. A conventional attack would fail against such protection. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, she broadcast on the fleet network, implementing final battle plan. Every species, every ship, every weapon working as one. This is what we trained for. What followed was the most complex military maneuver in galactic history. Krosan destroyers charged directly at the Devourer lines, drawing their attention and firepower. But instead of the suicidal assault it appeared to be, the attack was perfectly timed with Althari psychic strikes that confused the enemy targeting systems. Nexari vessels used the distraction to slip through gaps in the Devourer formation, their precision-timed shots disrupting the energy flows that connected the command ship to its escorts. Vex mining ships, converted for combat, used their industrial equipment to create debris fields that interfered with Devourer sensors. Human fighters darted through the chaos, their pilots coordinating with alien crews they had never met but understood perfectly through the shared tactical network. And at the center of it all, the diverse technologies that should have been incompatible somehow worked together. Human weapons modified with precursor principles, Krosan armor enhanced with Althari energy fields, Nexari computers running coordination algorithms that incorporated Vex mining logistics and human diplomatic protocols. The Devourer command ship found itself isolated, cut off from its fleet by a storm of coordinated attacks that came from every direction at once. Its adaptive defenses, designed to counter any single type of weapon or tactic, could not process the bewildering variety of threats that struck it simultaneously. All batteries concentrated fire, Maria commanded. Every ship, every weapon targeting the command ship's central processor. The combined firepower of 3,000 ships from dozens of species converged on a single target. But it was not just the sum of their weapons. It was their weapons working together, creating destructive interference patterns that amplified their effects beyond anything the individual technologies could achieve alone. The Devourer command ship's hull began to buckle, its self-repair systems overwhelmed by the coordinated assault. Around it, the rest of the Devourer fleet began to lose coordination as their central intelligence struggled to maintain control. And then, in a flash of light that could be seen across the system, the command ship exploded. The effect on the Devourer fleet was immediate and devastating. Without their central coordination, the individual ships began to behave erratically. Some continued attacking but without tactical coordination. Others simply drifted, their autonomous systems unable to process the new situation. Still others began the long journey back toward the galactic rim, following programming that told them to retreat when their command structure was destroyed. The battle was won, but the war was not over. Devourer forces throughout the galaxy are losing cohesion, reported Zelan from his mobile archive ship, but there are still millions of them scattered across hundreds of systems. It will take years to hunt them all down. Then we hunt them down, Maria replied firmly. Together, all of us, working as the united galaxy we should have been from the beginning. Elder Vorthak's voice came across the communication network, filled with an emotion the ancient being had not felt in millennia, hope. Admiral Chen, I formally request that humanity rejoin the Galactic Council, not as supplicants or junior members, but as the bridge builders we should always have recognized you to be. Maria looked out at the mixed fleet, floating around the fortress world, ships from dozens of species working together with a harmony that had seemed impossible just days before. Elder Vorthak, she replied, I think it's time to build something better than the old council. Something based on cooperation instead of hierarchy. Something that sees diversity as strength instead of weakness. General Tax's gruff voice joined the conversation. The Krosan military formally pledges support to this new alliance. We have learned much about the true meaning of strength in these past days. The Nexari Confederacy agrees, added President Calix. Our economic models show that cooperative diversity is far more efficient than competitive isolation. One by one, every species in the fleet added their voices to the growing chorus of agreement. The old Galactic Council, built on age and tradition and the assumption that the strong should rule the weak, was dead.